I'm thrilled to be here this afternoon at Founders Week. I'm told it's one of the seminal events of the Singapore FinTech Festival. It's a marvelous gathering of visionaries from across the world, pushing the envelope in the realms of entrepreneurship, finance, technology, policy. All of you are here to gather, to chart out a roadmap for our globe's commercial and industrial future. And all of this is while striving to ensure that we pursue universally beneficial economic aspirations. I think it's necessary for us to fashion a roadmap that allows us to strike the difficult balance between boosting commercial growth, thus driving our economies, and harnessing technology ethically and sustainably. Now, I find myself in a baffling position where, for all their organizational brilliance, the Singapore FinTech Festival have called upon me, an author and politician with no FinTech credentials, to speak from the stage, which I believe has conventionally been the preserve of stalwarts of entrepreneurship, finance, and technology, all of you remarkable men and women who script our world's economic and commercial destiny. Yet, throughout my long years of being a writer of both fiction and non-fiction, a United Nations official, a minister in the government of India, and now a fourth-term member of parliament for a third time in the opposition, I've chronicled, both as a distant observer and as an active participant, the rise of India as an entrepreneurial giant, an India which dreams what only a vastly ambitious, boundlessly innovative nation whose industrialization was arrested by more than 2 centuries of colonial rule can dream. And an India which strives day in and day out to breathe life into all these dreams. That is the India whose saga I've spent years writing about, prompting me to talk to you about the startup revolution blazing across my country, which offers in many ways lessons for business people, industrialists, and entrepreneurs the world over. In 2007, I published a book called The Elephant, the Tiger, and the Cell Phone, where I sort of likened the Indian economy to an old elephant, a big, slow, lumbering elephant with a long but not always happy history, of whom it was widely accepted that she'd seen better days. But then, after more than 4 decades of economic stagnation and suffocation, in the guise of self-reliance, a watershed moment came in 1991. Proclaiming in Parliament that no power on earth could stop an idea whose time had come, Dr. Manmohan Singh, the finance minister then, liberalized, privatized, and globalized the Indian economy. Almost instantly, our economy began to metamorphose. The elephant's old fat was giving way to muscle, and appearing on the elephant's back, at first faint, but soon clearly visible, was the unmistakable sign of stripes. As large black stripes began to whirl around her torso, there was no doubt at all the elephant was becoming a tiger. 17 years since I first used this metaphor, it can be safely said that in India today, entrepreneurs and startups symbolize those large black stripes, swirling rapidly around the elephant and transmuting it into a sleek, agile tiger, industrious and innovative once again. Today, India sparkles as one of the world's fastest growing major economies. Not only did our GDP grow by over a stellar 10% in 2010-11, but our economy rebounded fairly quickly after the globally catastrophic setback of COVID-19. This, in great measure, is due to those immense black stripes around the torso of our elephantine tiger. Indeed, between the fiscal years 2016 and 23, startups contributed to India's GDP growth by a whopping 10 to 15%. And according to a report by the Confederation of Indian Industry and Business Group, they're slated to add $1 trillion to our economy and create 50 million new jobs by the last fiscal year of the decade, 29-30. Now, no sooner had entrepreneurship taken off in the early 2000s than it began scripting a glorious transformative saga for India's economy. In the years since, this momentum has been fueled by the growth of our economy, a vast reservoir of talent stemming from all parts of India, one advantage of overpopulation, the advent of incubators, and a generous inflow of venture capital, both domestic and foreign, with India emerging in recent years as the second largest destination for venture capital and growth funding in the Asia Pacific, especially in such areas as consumer tech, fintech, and software as a service. To this list of enabling factors can be added the boundless global appeal that such entrepreneurs as Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and now Sam Altman all enjoy in popular culture. The cults of personality around these entrepreneurs, which frankly have created around the world and especially in India a whole array of fans, podcasts, entrepreneurial and fintech influencers on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, and such reality television as the enormously popular Shark Tank India, forging an aspirational culture dedicated to nourishing and strengthening startups. And so startups have suffused India's economy, becoming ubiquitous. Rapidly emerging as a global epicenter of entrepreneurship, India now boasts of the world's third largest startup ecosystem, with over 140,000 startups and more than 116 unicorns, dominating such sectors as fintech, e-commerce, and healthcare, cumulatively valued at more than $500 billion, which means we're trailing only behind the US and China. From Zoho to Zomato, Car Dekho to Cred, legions of Indian unicorns have risen to tower over our economy, making benchmarks in innovation and even prompting global players in the Indian market to shudder in fear of being eclipsed. When the angel investor, Eileen Lee, first coined the term unicorn to refer to startups valued at over $1 billion, she really meant to refer to something pretty mythical, something rare. India, however, has proven her wrong, because far from being rare or mythical, our unicorns are now preponderant, multiplying by leaps and bounds each year. In fact, in the realm of fintech alone, India has built 26 unicorns, including one decacorn, which are together valued at $90 billion. Now, India's tech landscape has ushered in a new era where digital public infrastructure is providing remarkable free-of-charge services to the public. One such creation is our Aadhaar, the unique identification number given to each citizen, which allows for document-free ID authentication, which has facilitated the creation of an incredible 500 million bank accounts for people who didn't have any. With this, the government's been able to deposit nearly ₹500 billion under public welfare programs directly into bank accounts, apart from introducing them to the other benefits of formal banking, easy access to credit, convenience, and legal protection. Speaking of money transfers, we Indians are blessed to have a free payment system named UPI, the United Payments Interface, which you know of in Singapore, because it connects to you here. It witnessed an astounding 16.5 billion transactions last month, and it appears that UPI will enable close to 200 billion yearly transactions this year alone, with over $3 trillion in fund transfers. And most importantly, it would save users, because of very low transaction costs, an impressive $10 billion in transaction costs alone. India's DPI has democratized digital platforms to a previously unprecedented scale, where young Indians can now use APIs to leverage it to build low-cost and innovative startups. It's no wonder we already have over 4,000 fintech startups in India, and I'm certain there'll be many more on the horizon. Now, the cost of sounding chauvinistic, at the risk of it anyway, I believe that Indians are innovators par excellence, and the urge to innovate is really ingrained in us from our early days. Ever since the dawn of Indian civilization, which in some ways was the dawn of time itself, the overlapping phenomena of innovation and disruption, which are the soul and spark of all entrepreneurship, have been driving Indians from strength to strength, making us incorrigible innovators, or as the Austrian political economist Joseph Schumpeter would have had it, creative destructors. India was, after all, ahead of the whole world in the realms of science, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy 2,000 years ago. And this is just to name a few fields where we outshone the globe at that time. Ours is the land of Ayurveda, that famed medicinal system of ancient India, with its herbs, oils, massages, and other therapies, now revived and imported to the world as a whole, with even such Western nations as Switzerland now officially recognizing it. Ours is the land where the zero was invented and the decimal system made a reality. Here was recorded, and that too over 2,000 years ago, the first instance of plastic surgery, rhinoplasty. And here too were, long before Copernicus and the West, long before Galileo, the first few rumblings of heliocentrism with a bunch of ancient Indian astronomers propounding a forerunner of the theory that the Earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around. The impulse to innovate, in other words, has been a defining characteristic of the Indian mind and Indian civilization from time immemorial. Now, the fact is that Indians, both at home and abroad, have today shone absolutely as CEOs in Silicon Valley, as entrepreneurs in Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore, and at the forefront of propelling innovation and sparkling disruption. So that vindicates the American inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil's dictum that I referred to on the main stage a few minutes ago, that the world in the 21st century will not experience 100 years of progress, but because of the dizzying rate of technological change, we'll experience 20,000 years of progress in 1 century. No wonder then that an impassioned India has plunged headlong into the generative artificial intelligence revolution, with Stanford University's 2024 AI Index identifying India with over 300 AI startups as one of the countries with the most AI startups in the world. Indeed, according to a report published by the Boston Consulting Group, India leads the world in ChatGPT usage, having surpassed even the United States, where ironically the generative AI revolution began, and which leads the world in total AI private investment. So wherever Naveen is sitting, he's not alone. ChatGPT is an Indian thing now. Though it may be a cliche to say that the I in AI may have come to stand for India, it can surely be said that it reflects India's unity in diversity, especially its linguistic diversity. Because by building some of our first multilingual large language models, Indian startups are shining the AI spotlight on our 22 official languages listed in our constitution, enabling Indians nationwide to reap the benefits of this technology in their own mother tongues. Moreover, a joint report by NASSCOM, India's foremost trade association for the information technology industry, and by BCG, predicts that our AI market will touch a staggering $17 billion by 2027. Now, however perilous the challenges facing us may be, Indians never cease to dream. India is a nation that dreamt of sending rockets into space and harnessing nuclear energy at a time when we were still an impoverished, largely illiterate nation, laboring to rise from the ashes of the British Raj. In November 1963, when India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, launched India's own space program, the moment was immortalized by the legendary French photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson, who clicked a picture of a rocket part being carried on the back of a bicycle. 6 years previously, Nehru had inaugurated India's first atomic research reactor. Nuclear power and space technology. There was no limit, he felt, to his and his people's scientific and technological aspirations. Never mind that their country was still mired in the bicycle and bullock cart age. Today, India seems to be leaving no stone unturned in harnessing quantum technology, with a national quantum mission firmly in place to incubate startups in this field, empowering them to leapfrog to global eminence, and seed, nurture, and scale up research and development to create a groundbreaking ecosystem that will enable us to be in the vanguard of the quantum technology revolution. As of now, India boasts about 40 to 50 startups in this field alone, quantum technology. All of this makes it evident that the elephantine tiger will not merely drive this technological and entrepreneurial progress and benefit from it, but in fact rise to embody it. And why not? After all, so legendary is our impulse to innovate, or at any rate to find inventive solutions to everyday problems, that the Indian principle of jugaad is renowned the world over. And what is jugaad, you ask? It is simply put a band-aid solution. But that doesn't quite cut it. Some may argue that jugaad is simply a dubious quick fix that testifies not really to any innovatory impulse, but just to the fact that the poor Indians, developing country, they have a tendency to make do, to chalao, as we say, kaam chalao, let's do it. I don't agree, because to my mind, jugaad, this Indian innovation, is about coming up with innovative and ingenious solutions to problems, finding unconventional and creative answers to the challenges before us, including challenges of resources, and above all, deploying new, non-traditional devices to resolve traditional age-old problems. So it is that a nifty Indian villager constructs a makeshift vehicle to transport his livestock and goods by rigging a wooden cart to an irrigation hand pump, which he has repurposed as an engine. Why not? Commonplace machines and household objects are refashioned in ways their manufacturers would never have imagined. In Punjab, for instance, in the hot summer months, cheap, locally manufactured washing machines double as churners of buttermilk, lassi, so popular in the scorching heat. But since many shops were too tiny even to accommodate washing machines, some innovators, unimaginably quick on their feet, repurposed the motor and the shaft from a table fan and attached blades to create portable blenders. So everything in India can be reimagined and reused. You just need an Indian by your side. Instead of complicating or gratuitously embellishing our products, we strip them down to their bare bones, and reinventing the wheel to lethal effect, we make them affordable, durable, and useful. Now, all of this is to say that while Indians are now masterfully thinking outside the box and coming up with innovative solutions in entrepreneurship, we've long been finding in our everyday lives creative ways to work within our resources, however mean, however limited they might be. It was in recognition of this impressively innovative culture of startups that the Global Innovation Index 2024 has now ranked us 39th among 133 economies worldwide, and I think it's safe to say the rank is climbing. Now, this irrepressible Indian spirit of jugaad has most recently incarnated in the realm of quick commerce, donning the mantle of astronomically successful ride-hailing and on-demand delivery services such as Rapido and Blinkit. Riding on the crest of India's digitization and peer-to-peer payments wave, these startups have transformed the simple idea of neighborhood deliveries into a powerhouse of scaled, efficient retail, all while generating a tremendous amount of gig employment, even though the working conditions of Indian gig workers, over 7 million of them at present, remain far from satisfactory in my view. But while this is a pernicious issue that Indian lawmakers are tackling, one thing is unmistakable. Long gone are the days when Indians had to rely on obliging friends and relatives returning from abroad to bring them chocolates, instant noodles, mobile phones, laptops, branded clothes, and cosmetics. Today, thanks to these startups, which are firmly anchored in characteristic Indian ingenuity, India is a country where in less than 15 minutes, and with only a few clicks of a smartphone, one can have the latest iPhone, a PlayStation 5, and bread, butter, and jam all home delivered from the same app, and that too, for the most part, 24/7. But to dream of innovating and creating something cutting edge that can help millions of people is also to confront the possibility of failure. After all, no visionary in any field has ever walked this earth without experiencing either failure or what it feels like to have the odds stacked insidiously against you. Yet if we today hail someone as a visionary, it's not because they attained an unblemished track record of success. It's because despite repeatedly failing, they got back up on their feet, they dusted themselves off and soldiered on, not halting until they had scaled the summit of their dreams. Now, I was asked to reflect on some personal experiences, though unlike you folk, I am no entrepreneur, but I've come to realize that if being an entrepreneur means building a trailblazing startup, then being a politician has, in my experience, meant trying to build an imaginative, progressive, prosperous, and liberal society with a lot of odds against it. In India, politics can often thwart this vital process of political imagination and innovation. The first casualty of petty politics is always progress. I give you an example from my own recent experience. In 2009, as a first-term member of parliament and as a Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, I clinched a deal for my constituency with the sitting council of Barcelona to twin Barcelona city with my constituency, Thiruvananthapuram, the capital of the southern state of Kerala. Had it fructified, this twinning project would have revitalized and revolutionized Kerala's capital, especially since Barcelona had a budget for this too. But the municipal corporation of Thiruvananthapuram, led by my political opponents in Kerala, the communists, killed the project for no reason other than it had been brought by their political opponent. And I'd actually managed to get a resolution passed in the Barcelona City Council, but all those months of hard work and those using of all my contacts was reduced to nothing. Dejected though I was, I recalled at that moment the most crucial lesson I'd learned just 3 years earlier when, after nearly 3 decades of the UN, I contested for the post of Secretary General of the UN as India's nominee, came within 2 votes of the winner, but was vetoed at the final ballot by a permanent member of the Security Council. And this episode had taught me that there is no disgrace in losing. What's far worse is the failure to try, the failure even to take a shot at winning. As the Bhagavad Gita teaches us Hindus, our duty is to strive without attachment to the reward. That is something that many risk-taking entrepreneurs know only too well, sometimes at their cost. So while the twinning project didn't materialize, I didn't give up. I tried to direct my innovatory impulses into another channel, and realizing that India, despite having one of the longest and most remarkable coastlines in the world, was lacking a major all-weather, deep-water transshipment port near the international sea routes, I pursued a long-standing demand that one be built in my coastal constituency, where there was an ideal location for such a port at Vizhinjam, a place that went back to Roman times as a very modest seaport. The road ahead was full of potential pitfalls, but I persevered. I lobbied the union government, the state governments, got the ball rolling, because I knew such a port could be truly beneficial for India, for Kerala, and of course for my constituency. Luck played a part, as it often does for entrepreneurs. At a time when the tender for the port concession had attracted no takers, I happened to run into Gautam Adani in line for an Air India flight to New York, and I was able to spend time mid-air persuading him to bid. He did, and earlier this year, after years of painstaking effort, the trial run of the Vizhinjam International Seaport commenced, and India will soon have its very first international transshipment port, with water so deep it can take the largest ships ever made, the largest capacity ships ever made. So the moral of the story is that the fruits of innovation may not always drop from every tree you cultivate, but they'll fall from at least some so long as you've kept on trying, conscientiously nurtured your roots, watered your seeds, pruned your branches, and if you're lucky enough to have the sun shine upon them at some point or the other. That's simply a couple of anecdotes from personal experience, but in India, the best is in many ways yet to come. Because age is on our side. I mean, the UN World Population Prospects report says that more than half of India's population is now under 30. So not only are we the world's most populous nation, we are one of the world's youngest. And according to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, 14.2% of Indians between the ages of 18 and 34 are engaged in some entrepreneurial activity or the other. In fact, nearly 50% of India's youth was deemed employable in 2023, an exhilarating fact dampened tragically by our country's soaring unemployment rates. But one of those depressing paradoxes of life, unemployment has significantly sharpened young India's entrepreneurial spirit. Because if you don't have a job, then you start something. Young people are envisaging disruptive startups in the middle of a job crunch. And this, in a way, has compelled them to aspire to be job creators rather than job seekers. Ultimately, given that the majority of preeminent Indian startups were launched by dynamic and young Indians, India must strive to channel our ambitious, innovative, and hardworking youth's drive into conducive avenues, empowering them to transition from seeking jobs to creating them, ensuring their creativity and brilliance are not snuffed out just by the dearth of opportunities in the job market. India believes it can be and ought to be that zestful country where fresh graduates can join a dynamic, competitive, productive, and youthful workforce, capable of being the powerhouse of the world. What is dismaying, however, is that our demographic dividend could become a demographic disaster if all we do is produce undereducated and unemployable young men and women. And this is a grave concern I've not only raised in Parliament, but grappled with during a very brief stint at the Ministry of Education. Because woefully, some graduates in India do not possess the skills and technical know-how to be suitably employed. And so employers often have to drain away their own resources to train them, which isn't always feasible. So to ensure there's no mismatch between what our youth studies and what the market demands of them, we've got to bring in vigorous educational reforms and skill development programs, which will enhance the employability of India's youth while fostering the culture of entrepreneurship we talked about, so we can equip India's future unicorn builders with the necessary prowess and technical know-how, especially in the advancing spaces of AI and quantum technology. A welcome step in this regard are the entrepreneurship and skill development programs conducted by the government, the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, which have mushroomed in India in recent years, the past few years. Organized in polytechnics, in technical institutions, in business schools, these programs instill in participants the acumen and the ability to set up and grow successful micro, small, and medium enterprises. And in my view, it'll also ensure that the progenitors of our startups from all parts of our country will be able to be involved, and not just the people from highly developed and prosperous big cities, the urban centers. If India truly is to become a leading light of global entrepreneurship, we must confront a score of challenges that continue dogging us. And for this to happen, legacy businesses, industry leaders, Indian state together must band collectively to deliver our startup founders from these woes. First and foremost is the shortage of capital and financing, and the onerous challenge of securing adequate funding, still haunting many a startup. India, in my view, requires sweeping reforms that guarantee the availability of abundant foreign and domestic funding for entrepreneurs. The government must further relax regulations and provide more incentives to attract foreign funds. We must also reckon with the oppressive red tapeism that casts spanners into some of our entrepreneurial enterprises. The government has launched several initiatives to boost entrepreneurship, but we have to overcome some policy and regulatory challenges that still remain. Regulations related to labor laws, to intellectual property rights, and dispute resolution, companies tell me, are still onerous. And for greater ease of doing business, we ought to move towards fewer and simpler regulations. Instead of expanding their vitality on exacting compliances, fledgling startups should primarily focus just on growing. Ultimately, streamlining regulatory processes, simplifying compliance procedures, and reducing bureaucratic hurdles will encourage a lot more young Indians to start and sustain businesses. If we could get this far without all of that, imagine how much farther we'll get when we get our act together there. Now, we in India ought to focus, of course, on vital infrastructure as well. The government has invested considerably in highways, railways, airports, and ports. And if you've flown into an Indian airport, you know what I'm talking about, how much better they've become. But the fact is that deficiencies in such crucial infrastructure as reliable electricity supply and high-speed internet persist in many parts of the country. If we are to boost our economic growth, create a conducive entrepreneurial atmosphere, and improve the quality of life right across the country, we have to address these gaps everywhere. And for that, it can't be denied that a startup revolution is indeed blazing across India. With such major urban centers as Bengaluru, Mumbai, Delhi, which have been traditionally at the forefront of the startup scene, the years to come will witness a surge, catalyzed hopefully by improved infrastructure, increased digital connectivity, and easier regulation, of entrepreneurial zeal in what we call the Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, the smaller towns, whose promise is immense. Not only has the number of startups in these cities been rapidly increasing, but Jaipur, a Tier 2 city, already boasts of a unicorn, Kar Dekho, the first of the capital of Rajasthan, a tourist city otherwise, has produced. My own constituency, Thiruvananthapuram, another Tier 2 city, boasts the annual Huddle Global, India's largest beach startup festival, end of this month, which is attracting entrepreneurs and innovators from across the world. I've been talking, in fact, to Mr. Mohanty about possibly doing a fintech on the beach in Thiruvananthapuram. According to a NASSCOM study, the Indian startup landscape is slated to create more than 1.25 million direct employment opportunities by next year alone. This growth can be augmented if the government, in collaboration and consultation with all stakeholders, including the opposition lawmakers, fosters a formidable digital economy, introduces tax incentives, and establishes government-backed and public-private incubators. Moreover, to buttress the significant strides we've been taking in the realms of AI and quantum technology, India should be more congenial to such emerging avenues as cryptocurrency and Web3. It is the allure and widespread governmental acceptance of these technologies worldwide that at times compels some Indian entrepreneurs to see the grass greener abroad and disentangle from the economic future of India to seek greener pastures elsewhere. We have to reverse that. Ultimately, and I need to wrap up now, it is undeniable that the elephantine tiger has come a long way. Its lumbering gait has evolved into a purposeful stride. Gradually emerging from the sanctuary of economic suffocation, this singular hybrid has leapt into the global commercial wilderness, ready to dominate it. In fact, when I wrote the book, the cell phone was my metaphor as the instrument of this change. Today, it's probably the internet, AI, high tech, including fintech. And our government must be aware of this. It must endeavor to improve infrastructure, boost digital connectivity, and reversing the terrible income inequality plaguing us, promote lasting financial inclusion. Only then will we arrive at the glorious tomorrow we so fervently dream of, a tomorrow where the indomitable entrepreneurs of India, with their feet planted firmly on the ground, even as their visions soar higher, harnessing the latest technologies, will transform our nation into the global citadel which historically we had been, of innovation, imagination, and prosperity for all sections of our vast population. This future, ladies and gentlemen, is India's for the giving. And believe me, it'll soon be available for pre-order on an app created, of course, by an Indian. Thank you all very much.